Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again with another video, and may the 4th be with you. Yes, today is Star Wars Day, and so of course I wanted to drop a video and talk about some Star Wars games, and in particular I wanted to focus on the PSP because there were actually 5 Star Wars games on the PSP. Two of them, though, one was a rather janky port of Star Wars Battlefront 2 that came out in the 6th generation consoles, and the other was a port of Star Wars The Force Unleashed, and it added a couple of new features, but it was more or less the same game, whereas it had the same plot and it took place in the same levels for the most part, though they were switched up and kind of redesigned to accommodate the less powerful system. The other 3 games, however, bear more mention, and so in this video, I want to talk about those other Star Wars games on the PSP. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Alright guys, so first up on the list, this one is by Rebellion, and this is the first game to release, I believe, after that Star Wars Battlefront 2 port. This is Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron, and this takes a lot from the Star Wars Battlefront games. The game takes place in the expanded universe now known as the Legends canon. This takes place right before the Battle of Yavin, and Han Solo is requesting the formation of kind of an elite squad of soldiers to do kind of subterfuge and things like that. He takes them from different walks of life, such as bounty hunters, saboteurs, drug smugglers, all that sort of those types of people, and puts them together and they form Renegade Squadron. This game, like I said, takes a lot of cues from the Star Wars Battlefront formula that we knew on the 6th generation. That means you'll be going through the large levels and taking over command posts and kind of wiping out the other enemy forces and claiming victory and moving on to the next level. The game itself, it's kind of simple, but I think it's a pretty enjoyable experience overall. There are some issues with the auto targeting, the auto lock on is kind of wonky at times, but for the most part it is something you can get used to. Graphics also are really watered down compared to what we saw on the Big Brother consoles, but again, this is the PlayStation Portable, so considering the fact that they were able to jam these large scale battles and have everything still running smooth, there's not a lot in terms of slowdown or pop in or other kind of weird things when you try to stretch the graphical capabilities of a system. For the most part, the game runs pretty smooth, and despite the kind of lower res textures and things like that, they still put a lot on the screen. There's a lot of action on the screen. It's all pretty fast paced. All in all, like I said, this game is actually pretty decent despite the limitations of the PSP, and it can still be had for pretty cheap. I picked up my copy relatively recently for $5, so I don't think it's gone that far past. But if you're a Star Wars Battlefront fan and you're someone who's collecting all the Battlefront games, this is definitely one you gotta have. So if you see it on the PSP, definitely pick it up. Okay, moving on to the next game on the list. This one's by Ubisoft, and this one, of course, again, is another kind of original story set in the Star Wars universe. This is set between, actually right before the events of A New Hope, and so this is Star Wars Lethal Alliance, and in this game you play as a Twi'lek slave named Rihanna. She earns her freedom and ends up working for the Rebel Alliance, actually being recruited by Kyle Katarn, who you may recognize from the Jedi Knight series of games that came out on the PC and original Xbox. This is a third-person shooter, not like the Battlefront games. This is more of kind of a third-person shooter, like single-player game, so you'll go through the levels completing objectives. As a Twi'lek, she's actually pretty acrobatic, and so you'll solve a bunch of environmental type of puzzles that has to do with your acrobatics. Early in the story, she meets another droid named Zio, and so the game Lethal Alliance, it kind of stems from the fact that you build a bond with this droid over time, and you can use those points to kind of unlock special two-player, well, not two-player, but combo attacks that you can do with the droid, like riding on the droid and things like that, spinning on the droid like a top to knock out enemies who surround you and things like that. You can also use Zeo to run up on enemies and knock them out via electric shock. So all in all, it's a pretty fun time in the combat. The targeting mechanics on this, it's very similar to the Battlefront games, but I think it works actually better, definitely better than it does in Renegade Squadron. And the shooting mechanics in this are simple but fun. She also has a close-up attack in the way of the Horn of Ryloth, I believe it is, and it's a plasma blade, kind of like a dagger that she'll use to pull off stealth kills, and you can also use it to melee attack enemies. All in all, graphics-wise, the graphics on this look pretty good, and this game also came out on the DS. I think all these games came out on the DS, and graphic-wise, the DS pairs in comparison to what we see here on the PSP. Still not quite PlayStation 2 graphics quality, but it all still runs really smooth and actually looks pretty good. Again, going back to the story, eventually she will find the plans to the Death Star, and actually this was the original Legends canon story of how the plans to the Death Star made it into Rebel hands right before the events of Star Wars A New Hope. So that's pretty cool. Ultimately, that's what she is credited for, her and Kyle Katarn and kind of the team they put together. Of course, the Rogue One movie kind of retconned all of that, which is fine. The Rogue One movie was fantastic, and I like the story in that better than what we got here. But this is kind of a cool what if story. And again, before the Rogue One movie, this was the canon story of how the Star Wars plans fell into Rebel hands. So again, if you see this one, if for a PSP game, this actually is a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and so if you see this, not too expensive either. Go ahead and scoop it up if you're a Star Wars fan. Okay, moving on to the final game on the list today, going back to Rebellion and the Star Wars Battlefront style games. This one actually is noteworthy because a lot of the elements from the original Battlefront 3 before the series fell to DICE. The original Battlefront 3, a lot of the story elements and assets were taken from that game and put into this one. And so this is a very interesting game. This is Star Wars Battlefront Elite Squadron. Okay, the story in this game is that you play as the clone X2. He is one of a set of twin clones who was cloned from the DNA of a Jedi, which is really interesting because later on in this game, being a Jedi's clone, you'll have access to the Force and things like that. Anyway, you play as one of two clones of this Jedi named X2. This game will span all the way through the Clone Wars, to the Dark Times, and even to the years after as Luke Skywalker forms his new Jedi Republic. And so you start off this game protecting a training camp on Tatooine from CIS droids, and then it goes on through the events of the Clone Wars into the Dark Times, and eventually under Luke's new Jedi Order, you actually get trained in the ways of the Force by your father, aka your Jedi template, before your older brother, of course, joins the Empire and falls to the dark side, and he himself starts training in the dark side of the Force. Of course, it ends with you two fighting at the end and you triumphing over your brother. But what I wanted to talk about is how much of a technical feat this game is. This was the most interesting out of the three games I played, simply because of the way they blended the gameplay styles. Fighting on the battlefront, it's not so much take over this command post and like you saw in the early Battlefront games and on Renegade Squadron, but in this there's a bunch of different objectives, so you'll have to defend this point or escort this droid or this person here throughout the levels. The cool part about it is, while this has land-based and space-based levels, they work seamlessly in the same battle. So you can be fighting on the ground and taking out troops, and then eventually you'll get control of, say, an ion cannon, because maybe a starship has moved above and is raining down destruction on you and your troops. You can use the ion cannon to disable their shields, and then from that point you'll hop in a starfighter and fly up to space, and you'll fly all the way up to space. It's broken up into small little kind of cutscenes as you enter space and come back to the ground, but again, technical limitations of the PSP, that's 100% okay. From there, you'll dogfight in space, and since you've taken out the shields with the ion cannon, you can actually board the capital ship from there, and of course blow up the core, the reactor core, and either hop back in your ship to escape, or you can even take an escape pod and shoot back down, where you'll resume the battle on the ground, things like that. So it's actually really cool and how it's all connected. In many missions, you'll find yourself fighting on the ground and in space and on capital ships and back again, all within the same battle. Whereas in even like Battlefront 2 on the Xbox and PS2, they had a space battle and then they had a ground battle like of the same, but they were separate. So it's cool that they were blended in this one. Again, really just a technical masterpiece on the PSP. All these, the other, like the other game I didn't mention earlier, but both games have the conquest mode, the heroes versus villains, the quick action fights, things like that. So you got a couple of different modes to bring you back. All in all three of these games are, in my opinion, definite pickups, considering I'm a Star Wars fan, and all of them can be had for fairly cheap. So if you see them, definitely pick them up. Okay, guys, I do believe that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. Have you guys played these games? What do you think about the Star Wars games on the PSP? As always, if you guys do like this content, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. If you haven't done so already, you'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out, and peace. Kona, quit messing up my audio. Go upstairs. Dios mío. All right. Round my ass. Be quiet. Shh, 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 shh.